Welcome, everybody. Lust is boring. You might not have heard this, but the CDC said that kids age 15 years old and younger typically spend about 9 hours a day on a screen. It's crazy. 9 hours a day on a screen. That's more time than they're probably spending sleeping. They're absorbing all these messages. And obviously, something that ends up sliding in there is a lot of pornographic images and ideologies. And so today we're going to have on the show Josh Glaser, an expert on how to porn-proof your family. Where is this coming from? How big is the problem? What are the preemptive strikes we can do to inoculate our kids against this pornographic culture? And then once it gets in, kids see stuff, how do you react? What can we do to protect them, to heal the marriages, the families, and the kids? And so before we dive in, I want to send a big thank you to our supporters on Patreon. Our Patreon community is what makes this podcast possible. And so if you want to help us to grow this mission, please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is in the show notes, or you can just go to patreon.com/Jason Everett, and you can give $3 a month or $30 a month, whatever you want. And then all that goes to help our family and our ministry. You also get a bunch of free swag, of free books and signed stuff and t-shirts. We'll meet up with you when we come into your town, and you can also submit questions for us to answer on this podcast. You'll get an exclusive library of more than 70 videos that we've done that you can access through Patreon. So if you want to become a member, patreon.com/Jason Everett. And then also a big thank you to our sponsor, Hallow. Hallow is the #1 Catholic prayer app. And the nice thing about promoting them is it's not stagnant content. They're always coming out with new stuff. New thing they have is really big and exciting. They have about a month-long challenge of listening to the Gospels, a little bit every day, but it's narrated by Jesus himself, the Son of God. Technically not God, but the guy who plays him in the Chosen series, Jonathan Rumi. And so you get to enjoy his voice and his gift of acting, presenting the Gospels, so that over the course, I think it's like 30 or 40 days, you get to listen to the entire 4 Gospels. And so if you want to get Hallow for free for a while, a little test trial, it's like a couple weeks, Hallow for free, just click the link in the show notes or go to hallow.com/lustisboring, and you get the access there. Now, lastly, before we dive in, last week we announced that we just launched our website, missionariesofchastity.com, and we want to thank you for making it a big success already in the first week. How it works is that you know a lot of people that need this message of chastity, but you might not be a chastity speaker, author, whatever, but if you just had the resources, you'd share them. And so what we did is invite people, hey, you want to spread the message of chastity? Who do you want to reach? Teens, young adults, okay, guys or girls, co-ed, what topic? LGBT stuff, pornography, chastity, dating, starting over. Pick your topic. Here's our resources. How many of them do you want? 100 of these, 500 of those? Just make a wish list. And then you launch your project. We announce it on social media. Hey, everybody donate to this person's project. Once we reach the goal, we send all of it to you for free. So you don't pay for anything. We don't pay for anything. We'll donate to these as well. And then you'll get all these resources for free on your doorstep to spread the message. In the first week of launching this, we've already launched, I think, 3 projects, sending out more than 2,000 chastity products to teenagers in Guatemala, Nicaragua, Mexico, St. Lucia in the Caribbean, and Colorado in 1 week. Let's just get started. So go to missionariesofchastity.com. You can either launch a project, support a project, or go on a retreat to learn more about how to live this out in the theology of the body. All that at missionariesofchastity.com. So today, to the show. On the show today, we have a man named Josh Glaser. Josh is the executive director of Regeneration, which is a ministry that focuses on helping marriages, families, men and women to live and learn God's plan for human sexuality. Josh has been married to his wife, Jamie, for 20 years, and most importantly, they've been blessed with 5 children. He's also the author of a book called Treading Boldly Through a Pornographic World. And so, Josh, thank you for being with us on Lust is Boring today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Jason.
Well, as a dad of 5 kids, this is a daily battle. Protecting our kids' innocence, not only just forming them and what to believe, but how to fend off the incessant garbage and pornification that seems to flood in through every potential crack in our defenses. As a dad, I know it's frustrating, but help other dads, if you would, and moms to have an idea, and those who may want to become parents, how big is this problem? I think a lot of parents kind of have their doing the ostrich approach of, well, not my kid, or, oh, well, it's little Playboy magazine, just a little picture, nothing too bad there. I'm doing a good enough job. We don't have any X-rated TV channels. We're good. Help kind of pluck those heads out of the sand. Give us an idea, like, how big is this problem?
Yeah, it's unfortunately very big. So when I was a kid, if you wanted to find pornography, you had to go out of your way. You had to find somebody's, some parent's stash. You had to pretend like you were 18 or find a place that would sell it to you. I know I tried. But today it's in every kid's pocket. I mean, it's the digital devices, and a lot of times there are digital devices in people's homes they don't even realize have internet access. Filters are great, but you can Google how do you get around a filter, and you can find out how to get around a filter. So it is a big problem. So in 2016, Barna did a study in which they found that 33% of all Americans are looking at pornography at least once or twice a month. 33%. So that's 100,000. Let's see, 100,000. Let me get that. That's not right. It's more than that.
100 million.
100 million. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, wait. Also, yeah. So 100 million people. So and I'm trying to wrap my brain around that. I can't even conceive what that is. It's the population of Canada times 2.5. I mean, that's a lot of people. Yeah. 1 in 3 people you meet are looking at pornography once a month. A 2007 study showed that over 90% of guys had been exposed to pornography by the time they were 18. Over 60% of the girls had been exposed. That's 2007. That's 15 years ago. And if that study is representative of our culture, that means a couple things. One, it means it's the normative experience for kids to be exposed to pornography. And it's probably also worthwhile to say that it's still illegal in this country, technically, for kids to see pornography, to be exposed to pornography. So, but for that to be the normative experience is overwhelming. That means it would be an unusual thing if your kids, are not exposed to pornography, even while in your home. So we have to be on guard. We have to be vigilant. But more than that, we really have to begin having conversations with our kids so that we get into this stuff with them, so that they're not doing it on their own.
Yeah, and it's endlessly frustrating. At least, I mean, as a parent, for example, we're launching all these videos every day on YouTube on chastity stuff, and literally every day I get alerts from YouTube. But look, someone left a comment, and it's porn of just people trying to embed pornography in the comment sections of our videos. And every day I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I don't understand how we can send people to outer space, have thousands of satellites there, but we just can't stop porn from showing up on a chastity video in YouTube. And so it's like this, endless barrage that didn't seem to go away. I saw the stats from one of the biggest porn websites, and they said that, this is 2 years ago, that people on their site spent, it was in 1 year, 4.5 billion hours watching porn. I kind of crunched the numbers. That's 500,000 years of human life wasted in one single year on one porn website. Now, so not only is it a massive quantity of consumption, I've heard it said and seen the data that they're actually targeting the kids. It's not that kids are accidentally stumbling upon porn, oops. The porn industry is going after the kids. So is that true? And can you back it up? Is the porn industry actually targeting children with their filth?
Yeah, that's what we've heard. We've heard a couple of different things. One is, I can't remember. There's a name for it actually, and we have it in the book, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. There's a name for it when a porn company will take something normal, a kid-friendly something, a Disney program, their favorite program, and misspell a word just a little bit, because when a kid's typing it in, they don't know how to spell it.
Yeah, porn napping.
Yeah. So to target kids. And I heard years ago that one of the reasons that pornographers would do this is because they know how addictive their product is. If they can get someone hooked when they're a kid, they've got a lifelong consumer, and that's money in their pocket. So I think the question for parents is, it's not a matter of, are you a good parent or not? It's not a matter of, is your kid a good kid or not? It's not a matter of, do you trust your kid or not? It's, do you trust pornographers? Do you trust pornographers to leave your kids alone? I think that's really the posture parents need to take today.
Yeah, and I think so many parents are just unaware of how many different portals of entry there are. My 10-year-old son just made the all-star baseball team for the city, and real proud of him. And he gets on this all-star team, and the other kids on the team pretty much all have cell phones. He doesn't, but he's like, well, can I use your phone so they can include me on their little text discussions of when we're meeting up and practice everything? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I get on this group thread of the other like 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. And like within minutes, one of the girls, there's one girl on the team, just incredible athlete, great arm. She texts like, hey, what's everybody's TikTok, name? I'm like, dude, TikTok? Like these kids are 10, TikTok?
Yeah, wow.
Like,
wow.
I mean, you get on there and in 30 seconds, it's just filth thrown in your face. And to be a parent and be like, oh, well, it's not TikTok. That's not a porn site. We're good. When a kid gets this stuff, what is it doing to their brains? Like, is it particularly harmful to the young brain in a different way than it is the adults? What is it doing to the kids' brains when they see this stuff and get hooked on it?
One of the hard things for kids, because their brains are still developing, they actually don't have the brain structure in place to discern the difference between reality and fiction. And I mean, I spent the last 20 years working with adults who are wrestling with unwanted sexual behaviors, including pornography. It's a part of my own story too. So we already know and are learning more and more about what's happening in the brain and the nervous system with adult pornography addiction. And we could talk about that. But for kids, it goes even further because their brains are not fully formed yet. And so they're forming around pornography. So just one example of that, and it's, I think, pretty easy for people to understand. If an adult if her adult brain learns to go to pornography as a way to relieve stress, and I'm not saying that the adult has learned that, but the brain's learned it because pornography releases chemicals in the brain that bring a sense of calm. So if an adult's learned that and their brains become habituated to, I feel stressed, that's when I feel temptation to look at porn. Mm-hmm. For a kid, if that happens in a kid's brain, then the kid's brain never develops to learn how to deal with stress, how to cope with the difficulties in life. So normal growth patterns that would happen for kids, normal maturing of a kid's brain and their ability to relate with others in healthy ways, to regulate their emotions, doesn't happen because their brains even early on became dependent on pornography. So it is more dangerous for kids. Dr. Jill Manning has done some research, and she said that kids who are looking at pornography, actually their idea about healthy sexuality is shaped by the porn that they're looking at. And so they are much more likely to believe that a healthy sex life would include things like multiple partners, would include violent kinds of sex or aggressive types of sex. That's the kind of that difference between an adult who has the full frontal cortex or their frontal cortex fully developed, and a kid who doesn't. So, yeah, it's particularly destructive for kids, for adults too, but for kids certainly.
Yeah, and I've seen, I think, in my own ministry of just seeing these boys getting hooked on porn and then expecting their wife to be this fulfillment of this pornographic fantasy when he's actually addicted himself to novelty. And that's something a single person can never fulfill. But then on the flip side of it, I remember meeting high school girls, several of them, that told me that they wanted to get married, but they wanted to have a celibate marriage. And I mean, you start talking for like, where's this coming from? And, they start opening up, and like the only thing they've ever seen of human sexuality is online porn. And if that's what the one flesh union is, count me out. I want spousal love and companionship and that friendship. But if that's what happens in the bedroom, no way. And so to me, it's not only that it's sealing in their brains for this pornographic craving, it's also sealing in their brains a pornographic revulsion toward this of just like, my goodness, if that's what it is, count me out. And, like you said, it's doing to the brain. I mean, I remember as a kid, when I was a kid, friend down the street had porn because his dad had it, and then cousin had porn because his dad had it. But it creates like this craving to go back to get that hit, to the point where we're like, when we were in grade school, like we were stealing like swimsuit magazines out of the shopping mall bookstores because we had to get that hit. It's almost like someone gets hooked on drugs has got to steal some money to be able to buy that next bag of crack. And I think it does the same neural pathways in our brains, sending us back. I think it was C.S. Lewis said it's this recipe of an ever greater craving with an ever diminishing reward. That the longer you're in it, the more you want it, but the less it satisfies you. And it just leaves you with this perpetual restlessness where you're some guy who's now 20, 30, or 40, but you have the emotional regulation skills of like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And, so to avoid getting to that point, the preemptive strike, I mean, we've really kind of set the landscape of the problem that's out there. Let's focus for the rest of the show, like on the solution. What are we going to do here? Maybe as a preemptive strike, as a parent, like when do you start this conversation with your kid, and how do you start this conversation?
Yeah, so I think one important thing for parents to recognize, even what we've talked about so far, I'm imagining that some parents listening are going to feel like I'm already overwhelmed. Like, how does Jason know like the entry points of porn in his family? How do you keep up with this? Stuff's changing all the time. I just want to say, if there was ever a time in history where one sex talk was sufficient, and I think it's questionable that was ever sufficient, but if it was ever sufficient, it's not sufficient today. When I was a kid, if a parent had a sex talk with their kids, it was the talk. That's the way we talked about it. And it was very uncomfortable for the kid. It was probably equally as uncomfortable for the parent. And they were both happy when it was over because, we got that out of the way. Let's hope that does the job. That just doesn't work. It doesn't work. We really want to frame up, and part of what we talk about in this book is having lots and lots of conversations with our kids, not lots of lectures, lots of conversations. That does a couple things. One, if we start young with our kids, it helps us to feel more comfortable and helps them to feel more comfortable. If you wait until your kids are 16 or 17, the sexual feelings are already, they're churning. They've probably already been exposed to stuff at that point anyway. And it heightens the uncomfortability of it. But if we start when our kids are little, it's a normative part of their experience. Like our kids don't, they don't like it when we talk to them about table manners or about academics or finances necessarily, but they know that's part of what it is to be in this relationship with mom and my dad. We talk about those things. When you introduce conversations around sex early, it's just what they know. It's normal for them too. And in this day and age, if parents aren't doing that, then the kids are going to take their normal God-given curiosities, questions, insecurities to the internet. And the internet, however poorly a parent thinks they're going to do at this, I guarantee you they're going to do a much, much better job than the internet, because the internet is, as we've said, it's full of lies, it's full of images and ideas. It's a completely destructive place to learn about sex. But I don't know about you. I had lots of questions about sex. I had lots of questions about girls. I had lots of questions about my body when I was growing up. If the internet had been around, I would have Googled those things. I would have been like, how big is a penis supposed to be? Like, what does a girl want sexually? You type those things in today, and you're gonna get all sorts of filth in your brain. So we want to be the go-to source for our kids. So we start young. So am I answering your question?
Yeah, no, for sure. And so how, like brass tacks, what does a parent do to set up screen security? So like, okay, my kid's however many years old, and we decided, okay, it's time for them to have a screen. So we gave the kid an iPhone or Kindle, an iPad or whatever. But the parent's like, okay, before I hand this over, or maybe the kid's already had it for a couple of years and the parent's coming to this realization, I got to lock things down. Like specifically, how does a parent learn to go into settings, general notification, privacy, like what are some tips that you can give parents to be a little bit more tech savvy to catch up to their 11-year-old?
One of the things we actually talk about in the book, Jason, and we do offer some ideas on different avenues that parents would have, like filters. There's accountability software. We have some things in our appendix about specific resources that would be helpful. But primarily, and as helpful as those things are, it's not an either or. So don't hear me saying that. But we really believe that the primary solution for kids for parents with their kids, is the problem is technological. The answer is not technological. The answer is really relational. And so whatever you choose to do with filters and with accountability software on your devices, we really want to encourage parents, like it's something you do with your kids. So for instance, when you talk about giving their kids the first device, none of us would hand a kid a pair of keys and to the car and say, have at it. Good luck. Congratulations. You got your first car. None of us would buy our kids a ticket to London and say, have a good trip. London's a great place. We would go with them. We would be sitting right next to them. We would probably drive first for them. The same thing with internet use. Whatever the device is, more than putting filters on it, you sit down with your kid and you begin going through together. So for example, with my kids, when they're very young, before they had their own device, if they're using our device, we'd say, okay, we teach them the difference between being on the computer and being on the internet, because that's not always so easy to discern these days. Yeah. And from there, we'd talk about where it's appropriate to go and how you find. So our very little kids, you're allowed to go where mom and dad have told you you're allowed to go, period. You can't go to sites or places on here without permission. And so they'll come to us and ask us, can I go to such and such? Yes, you can. Can I go here? I don't know what that is. Let's go look at it together. So it's something that we do together. When they get older, we actually began to do what we called fire drills with our kids, pornography fire drills. And so we'd sit down and we'd say, hey, listen, sometime while you're on here, something's going to pop up on the screen and it's going to be pornographic. And what's pornographic? Well, for our sake, since you're little, let's just say it's a naked body in some form. That's just the kid version. It's just you're going to see a picture of naked people. If that happens, here's what you do. And we'd walk them through that. And then we'd practice it. We want to practice it. And you're never going to be in trouble for telling us when that happens, because we want you to tell us. That's part of the process. So those are some of the early conversations we'd have. And we talk about their devices as something that goes along with responsibility. So it's not a matter of, this is your device and you can do what you want with it, but this is your device, and just like the car, you'll have more and more freedom with it as you grow in responsibility and as you demonstrate that you know how to use this responsibly and safely.
Yeah. I like the idea of going on the journey with them, that this isn't something like we're just imposing on you. Like, we're in the trenches with you on this.
Yeah.
We've got to have custody of our own senses. One way that I thought about it just in recent days is, we got back from a vacation and the kids, wanted to look at all the videos on the TV. So we got on my phone, and I pull up screen mirroring for the TV and I click the button. All of a sudden my phone is on the living room television and everybody sits down on the couch and watches it. I think as a parent, you could think of, imagine if screen mirroring is always on. That whether you're, in your room, whether you're away from the house, the screen mirroring is always on and your kids are always sitting in the living room watching dad's cell phone on the big screen TV. If you're okay with that, you're where you should be. If there's a part where I got to kind of turn off screen mirroring for a little bit here because I got kids in the living room, it's like, wait a minute, are we in this together or are we not? Is this something I'm just imposing on my children because, this is adult content? I mean, that whole idea of adult content is so messed up, because it kind of, just the very language of it implies that once you turn a particular age, it becomes appropriate, as if like you can use women after you're 18. You can degrade another human being as long as you're old enough. I mean, I think whoever owns the language, wins the argument before it even starts. I mean, pro-choice. I mean, even say that word is to give them a victory. It's like, no, choices are great. I'm pro-choice. I chose what to have for breakfast today. I chose which socks I chose to put on. Like, it isn't about choice. This is about adulthood. And so we've got to, I think, reclaim a bit of the ground of not using the language of the world of like, that's adult content. So, I mean, you'd mentioned, when your kids see something, let's say they see naked bodies, we walk them through that, what to do. Give us what to do. You tell the kid, hey, if you ever see a, naked body on the internet, or the language we use with the kids of, you see a picture where someone shows parts of their body that should be covered up with a bathing suit. What do you do in the Glaser household to tell the kids, if you see that, here's what to do? Yeah.
And we stole this right from a book, trying to remember I'm spacing the author. It's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. But in essence, the three things you do. First thing you do is if it's a laptop, you flip the lid down. You don't try to X out. If it's a mobile device, you flip it over so the screen is face down. If it's a big screen, you just turn the monitor off. Don't try to X out, because sometimes there's a landmine there. You say out loud, that's pornography, loud. And that does something to disrupt it fires at the prefrontal cortex, and it does something to disrupt what's happening in that moment. And then you come tell mom and dad, and that's it. And if you're not with mom and dad, you tell a responsible adult. So I just saw pornography. And then what we want to do as parents, then we want to respond with, I'm so glad you told me. You did a great job. Good for you. We want to cheer them on. Like, you did exactly what I asked. That's fantastic. Even if they did it imperfectly, we want to really model there that when they come and tell us something, that they've traveled into bad territory, that we're a safe place to come to, and we're proud of them for doing it. And then we want to try to help them unpack a little bit, like what was it like for you? What happened? We don't want to respond with, how did you get there? I told you not to go to that place. You didn't ask permission. We don't want to go there. We really in that moment want to primarily applaud what they did. Later, there might be a time to come and just say, hey, so tell me how you got to that site. But we want to stay level-headed. And I would actually encourage not to discipline a kid, even if they went where they shouldn't have gone. If they did the right thing after they did the wrong thing, then focus more on the good thing they did from doing the wrong thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's flip the script a little bit. Let's say instead of them coming to you, you figured out, hey, we got to be more vigilant on this. You install Covenant Eyes or something like that. And then you get in your report, my kid just looked at a porn site. He actually looked at 15 of them. Now I'm going to have this conversation with my kid. What do you do then? That they didn't come to you. It's very clear that maybe they just spent the day doing it, or, oh my goodness, the kid's been looking at this junk for months under my nose. I've got my heart up in my throat. I'm nervous. The kid's going to come home from school. I know I need to have the talk. Maybe walk us through that conversation, where the kid's been gorging on this stuff behind your back, and now you've got to have that tough conversation.
Yeah.
How do you broach that?
Yeah. The first thing you do is really, really counterintuitive. It's you wait, you breathe. We find that so many parents, just like you described, their heart's in their throat, their mind's racing. How long has this been going on? How could this have happened? They're carrying an adult burden in that moment. It's a parenting burden of, now my kid, this innocent child that I love has been exposed to this stuff, and I'm freaking out. I need some type of space, some type of time, and it's going to vary for different parents, just to call my tribe, to call my allies, have somebody else help me hold that burden, somebody who can help hold me in that moment. Because I want to be in a place where when I go to talk to my son or daughter, I'm not asking them to make me feel better. I'm not asking them to carry the burden that I'm carrying about what's going on for them. I want to go and be in a place as much as I can, and it's going to be imperfect, but as much as I can, I want to be a non-anxious presence with my kid. Now, on the flip side of that, there's some parents who would like to stick their head in the sand and say, like, okay, great, I'll take time until I feel ready.
Take a month.
You're never going to feel ready to have that conversation. Yeah, it's not a matter of until you feel ready. It's just a matter of you've had some time to just breathe. You've got your oxygen mask on, and now you're ready to go help them. So we recommend in the book, first of all, you find a safe time to be with your kid. So it's not, if you're on your way to grandma's, you're 5 minutes from grandma's, you don't have the conversation then. Whatever happens in that conversation, your kid is probably going to be feeling really embarrassed and really ashamed. They're going to feel like they want to hide. And so have the conversation in a time and space where they can hide afterwards, where they can go and be alone if they want to be. They may not want to be, but leave some room for them just to be able to breathe and decompress. But we recommend in as level a voice as you can, as loving a voice you can, let them know, like, hey, I just found this is what happened. I picked up your device or I was on your computer or whatever, or I was on the family computer, and I found the history that shows that you've been looking at pornography. Can you tell me about that? So notice what I didn't do. I've talked to a lot of parents over the years who try to hint. They want their kid to come clean, and so they try to present an opportunity. That's just a setup. We don't recommend that. So don't say to your kid, so, how's the internet been for you recently, and because the knee-jerk response unfortunately for all of us is to try to hide. I mean, go back to Adam and Eve, when we hear the voice of even our loving father, we run. It's part of what shame drives us to do. And so just you do the heavy lifting. Don't make your kid do the heavy lifting. So go to them and just, this is what I found. Will you tell me about it? In that same vein, don't be surprised, don't be alarmed, don't be overly concerned if they try to deceive, hide, downplay what they've done. But also don't be duped. It's a normal thing. So if they say, I don't know how they got there, like, well, it's on your computer. You were looking at it. I just want you to talk to me. As all that to say, as much as we can, we want to try to get on our kids' team. It's not, we don't go like this with this message. It's not like you did wrong and I'm over here and we're going to pit each other against the other. It's I want to come alongside you. I want to sit next to you. I want to learn what's been happening for you. You're not the problem here. Pornography is the problem, and I want to be on your team with this. So, we start with questions and we listen, and we don't need to make a big deal out of it at that point. We do. If I could go on for a little bit longer, we do want to explore a little bit. Like, we want to find out the degree that our kids are dealing with this. So some things to look for, like how, and to ask about, how long has this been going on? When did it start? If it was yesterday was the first time and this is how it happened, that's one thing. If it's 6 months ago, now we've got a little bit bigger of a concern, because if they've been looking at pornography on a regular basis for 6 months, it's likely their brain has already started to change and there's some habituation that's been taking place. We want to find out frequency. How frequently have you been looking at pornography? And some of that you can tell from an internet history if you've seen that. But and then we want to find a little bit about the intensity of the situation. Is it and this is hard to do, and I don't even have a great recipe for this, but what kinds of stuff have they been looking at? If a kid has been sexting with a friend at school, That's one thing. If a kid's been looking at softcore pornography, that's another thing. If a kid's been looking at hardcore pornography, if they've been looking at illegal stuff, I mean, we want to know something about the content, just so we have, because those things will inform how we need to respond after that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because, it's one thing to look at some pornographic website. It's another to be part of a porn ring in your own high school where your friends and buddies are trading pictures of classmates and the girls are sending the pictures. Because, I've had guys say to me, hey, the girls are worse than the guys are at this school. I mean, you should see the pictures they're sending. And so, a parent might be locking things down on the internet and not realize, well, that's great. The kid's not even looking on the internet. He's getting it all through text messages and through these photo sharing apps and things like that. And so a whole different approach when it comes to within his own social circles. But I like the approach you're taking of just, hey, first step is maintain your peace. And I remember when my mom found my porn stash, when I don't know how old I was, 13, 14 years or whatever, now that I look back, that's what she did. I mean, she kind of waited till there was a time where we were home, and she broached the subject with me that she had found the stuff, and I was obviously mortified and embarrassed and shamed. And, and she didn't rattle on with some 3-hour lecture, and shaming me, but she let me know that stuff doesn't belong in the house. And, as a Christian family, I look at that stuff, and she got rid of it. And then I had my time, and, I went upstairs and I looked to make sure that she had gotten everything, because I thought I had it stashed pretty good. And sure enough, she cleaned the whole thing out. But
Wow.
In the midst of that shame, there was also a sense of relief that the parents don't understand the kid is likely to feel, because a lot of times they feel in bondage of this junk and it's just weighing them down, but they don't know how to throw it away. They don't know how to delete the stuff and stay away. And so sometimes the parents' discovery is doing something for the kid that they feel that they can't do for themselves. And so, there's going to be a sense of gratitude in the heart of the kid that, like, you're protecting them from this stuff. Now, when you're discussing these things, do you have any ideas, tips on how to approach this subject for the girls that might be distinct in the approach from the guys? Because, for the guys, it's like, well, every guy's looking at it. Everyone in my class looks at porn. Whereas with the girls, there's a different element of shame and secrecy. Like, any tips for how to broach the subject when it comes to talking to young women about it?
Yeah, actually, I'd love to hear from you about this. But one thing I do know is, so we work with adults in our ministry, and we've heard from so many adult women who expressed that because their church had talked about this as an issue that was just a guy's problem, it actually increased their sense of shame. Because now it wasn't just that I'm ashamed that I'm looking at pornography. It's now, well, I don't even have a woman's problem. I've got a guy's problem. What does that mean? That's confusing. One young woman we walked with for a bit, she literally had one of her church leaders that she confided in say, no, you don't have a porn addiction. That's not something you struggle with. That's just a guy issue. And she walked out kind of like, I just told you that was yeah, it was really unhelpful. But I mean, that kind of thing just sends young women into hiding more. And like you just mentioned, the relief that somebody can feel, we're made for the light. We actually love the light. There's something in us that wants to be able to come out into the light and bask in the light. But sin and shame keeps us hiding. It keeps us running towards the darkness. And we begin to believe that that's where we belong. That's the only place where we're going to find love, affection, connection. And so the one thing I'd say is to Christian parents and leaders, you got to talk about this issue with your daughters, and you got to talk about this issue in the larger context as a problem that men and women experience, guys and girls experience, so that you create an environment where girls know I can step out of the darkness and into a place where there's light. I'm welcome there too. So that's what I'd say about. But what I mean, you've talked to a lot of young people. What would you say to that question? I love your question.
Yeah, I learned a lot from Kelsey Skoke's book. We published it for her, called Uncompromising Purity. It's not just a guy problem. And she kind of dives into even teaching women how their monthly cycle plays a role in their temptations. Of like, because sometimes out of the blue, the woman will be like, man, it just seems like it's a particular time of the month, I'm really interested in this stuff. And I'm so much more sensitive to human touch, and all my senses are heightened and my desires are worse, my temptation. Where's this coming from? But if we're teaching them the cycle of their own fertility and how that ties in to their desire for affection and touch and sense and all these things, it's like, Oh, that makes a little sense. And so they can kind of shore up their defenses, so to speak, leading into that part of the month. And it's not just temptations, but, things like anxiety disorders, mood dysregulation. A lot of times when a woman understands her cycle, she can be more patient with herself of like, hey,
Yeah.
maybe I'm feeling a little bit more anxiety than normal. Well, maybe it's because of this. Okay. That doesn't take away the temptation, but frames it in a biological context. They don't realize, wow, something is so wrong with me if I'm feeling a fluctuation of desire, anxiety, or this or that. And so just helping her to understand herself. And then also the relational desire that's underneath a lot of these cravings. I used to say that, pornography for a guy, is, one word, Playboy, and then 50,000 pictures. Whereas for a girl, pornography is more like, one picture of like Fabio on the cover and then 50,000 words. That's an oversimplification of this gender stereotype, because the pictures are obviously also stimulating to women. But I think what makes it all the more alluring is the storyline behind it, of desirability, of pursuit, of strength, and that's why I think it makes a special sense when I heard a man say that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's human connection. And so
Yeah.
I think quite often when a woman is lacking healthy intimacy, healthy human connection, it's so easy to escape into this pornographic world. And then when they do, they imbibe this sense of shame. And then sometimes that shame, to me, I think becomes so deep, it's almost as if they return to the porn to marinate in this broken identity of shamefulness, of, well, a failure is who I am, alone is who I am, shameful is what I am. And so I'm just going back like to the scene of the crime, so to speak, to recreate this sense of shame, because that's who I believe I am. So there's deep psychological stuff going on, whether male or female, but how do we,
You know,
yeah, go on ahead.
well, what's fascinating about what you're saying is I think I like and I appreciate it's the stereotype, but I like the difference between guys and girls with that. But I think at the same time, it is telling. I mean, it's just kind of telling. I think girls may be more in touch with their relational side.
Mm-hmm.
The story of pornography, the story of the image, is the story of the gospel. It's twisted, it's contorted, it's shaded, it's blurred, but it's still the same story. A naked body is an expression. It's an expression of, you are worth this much. You can have all of me.
Yeah.
And so the relational longings of a man or woman's heart is drawn to that. The identity issues of a person. So if they're feeling like a piece of crap because of what they've been looking at, there is still the heart still finds that draw of, I feel lousy. I feel like a piece of garbage. I don't even feel like I can go to my church or people in my life to talk to about this. But the heart, and not the mind may be completely confused about what a person's doing, but the heart says that this person here, this image here is giving their full self to me. They still see something valuable to me, even though it's a fiction, an illusion, not the real thing. It's still speaking to the heart on that deep level. And I think that's some of the, it's, there are two sides to it. On the one side, it's the sinister expression of porn because it's hijacking something good that we're really longing for. On the other side, I do think it helps to speak to a person. You're not longing for this because you're completely broken and utterly disgusting. You're longing for it because deep down inside, you're longing for something that God has created you to long for, a deep sense of your worth and identity, your value as an image bearer of God, a deep sense of connection with God and others. Those are human longings. Those aren't perverse longings. They just get twisted in pornography. So I love that. I love what you were sharing there. I think it leads us in a really good direction with conversations around this stuff.
Yeah, because what you're saying, I think, is healthy for especially the young women to kind of affirm the yearn that's underneath
Yeah.
it. That
Yeah. Well
instead
said.
of shaming it, oh, that's bad. It's like, well, maybe there's something really good that you're after, that you're created for, that you deserve, and that's why you desire these things. And I think when we live in a culture that's kind of rebelling against gender stereotypes in general, because maybe they become so rigid that now we're kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying, no, masculine, feminine, it's just cultural conditioning and stereotypes are all false. But like, instead of letting the pendulum swing so far to the point that we're discarding any of our sexual differences, maybe we need to have a more balanced approach and be like, okay, why are there really no male pornographic romance novels? targeted at male audiences? Like, are men really, what percentage of the population of men in the world are reading 400-page thick, long sexual romance novels? Like, really, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Like 0.000000001%. Why? Is it because the culture just conditioned us not to like romance novels? I think we have to ask the courage of like, why is that appealing to the woman's heart? You know, some women, you know, why are they? It's because they want to be part of this story, this adventure, this tension of feeling perhaps unwanted, but yet being desired by this person of strength over these other people, and the conflict and the tension, like underneath all those broken desires. Because concupiscence, a friend of mine described it the other day. He said it's almost like you're at the moment of temptation, like the edge of the cliff, and concupiscence, which is that kind of darkened intellect, weakened will, our disordered appetite that we inherited through original sin. He's like, that kind of just leans us over that cliff a little bit. It's this natural inclination due to our brokenness to kind of lean over into the wrong direction. Obviously, grace in time that can be redeemed to a great extent. But so we just got to affirm in women this desire that this isn't just part of an earthly romance that you desire. Like, this is the craving of your soul to be desired by an eternal bridegroom who longs to become one with you in this ecstatic union of your glorified body and soul. Like, you're created for this, and all the devil can do is just twist and distort it and feed you this counterfeit that's going to leave you feeling like your bridegroom doesn't even desire you anymore.
Yeah. And isn't that the most shameful piece, the saddest part of this, at least to me, that the longing of our bridegroom is union with us, to the point where when he saw us unfaithful, sullied by our own sin, came for us, and in that state gave us his body. This is my body given for you, his naked flesh given up for us. And yet so often we walk around in our broken state, in our sinful state, believing that he wants nothing to do with us anymore. And this is, as we talk about this in the book, I don't know what it was like for you growing up. Sounds like your mom did some things right, but I know that for so many Christian kids, there's kind of been the sense of, it's an all or nothing. It's a light switch thing. The light's either on or off. I either remain a virgin until I'm married or I don't. And if I messed up in some way, then game over. I don't really have that pure gift to offer on my wedding night. And I think that kind of vision for our kids, if that's the vision we're giving our kids, like just stay a virgin until you're married, that's the real goal. That's a great goal, but that's a subcategory of a much larger goal, a much longer journey that we're all on, which is a journey of becoming people who learn to love like Jesus loves. If our kids only have that vision, one of the things we like to say is if whatever vision we put in front of our kids, if they can ever move beyond it, so it's behind them, then the vision's too small. So if they ever, if they have sex before they get married, if they look at pornography, if they masturbate, whatever it may be, where they feel like, I'm already damaged goods, then they're going to be more prone to go back into the darkness. We don't want that. The Christian message is that even though we had strayed far, even though we had messed up, that was the place where he came for us, where sin increased, grace increased all the more. That's unbelievable, astounding, but we've got to dare to believe it as parents for our kids. So I think part of the vision we want to set for them is a lifelong vision that doesn't just get them to the finish line of marriage, but extends throughout marriage. It's like, how do I become a person who loves? How do I become a woman who loves with a Christ-like love? How do I become a man who loves with a Christ-like love? That's a journey that we're on as parents. So let's be on it together with our kids.
Yeah, no, what you're saying reminds me of an episode we did a while back with a woman named Rachel Geiger. The episode is called Idolizing Virginity. And she made this point that I thought was excellent, is that you do not have value because of your virginity. Your sexuality has value because of you. Because if you value yourself on the presence or absence of your virginity, then even some people, when they get married and lose their virginity, feel like they've lost something. It's because they were kind of raised in this false idea of like virginity is the barometer of your value, and you can't let go of that. And then it's gone, and it's like, well, I just have less to give to a husband one day because I had one shot and I blew it. And so what's the point of waiting? And so to prevent kids from going down the wrong road, how would you suggest parents kind of instill like kind of a healthy biblical understanding of human sexuality in their kids?
Yeah, we got to have lots of conversations like this, and especially as they get older. So when they're younger, we want to talk up marriage and sex. That marriage and sex, they're linked together, they belong together. We want to talk in this day and age. We want to talk about male and female and how good and wonderful it is to be a boy, how good and wonderful it is to be a girl, how boys and girls are alike, but they're different. One of the things we did at our table when our kids were little, I remember one night just saying, "Hey, what's something that's awesome about dad that mom doesn't have, and what's something awesome about mom that dad doesn't have?" So like they're talking about my scruff, and so we can go from there. And yeah, like one of my kids is like, "I love dad's scruff because I love putting my face next to his," and other kids are like, "I hate his scruff for that. It hurts. It hurts." I'm like, right, but what is my scruff? What does that tell you about what God is like? Like, well, there's a part of God that's maybe a little rougher, that has a strength to him that wants to, throw you up in the air and then catch you, right? And then what about mom? Like, well, and we could talk about, breastfeeding or mom's tenderness or her. And now, my wife is an incredible leader, so we get into some categories there where we certainly cross what would maybe be stereotypical gender lines. But we just want to begin like pumping our kids' creativity, their thoughtfulness about like how good it is to be a boy or girl. As they get older, we have to have honest, kind of transparent conversations about the reality that we're living in and how that. And actually, that happens when our kids are younger too. But in our family, we do a lot of conversations around media, music, movies, shows. We're looking for what's the counterfeit and what's the real. What's the real that's kind of mixed in with the counterfeit there? And I'll tell you, Jason, I've had conversations with my kids where I'm like angry about what we're watching, and they're pulling out some things in it that I'm like, I didn't see that. That was beautiful. I'll give you an example. And this was a sad example for me. It was a really hard conversation. Watching one of the shows we love, and in it there's a teen couple that gets pregnant, and the girl decides she's going to have an abortion, and so they go to Planned Parenthood, or the Hollywood version of Planned Parenthood. And the scene was done beautifully. I've got to be honest. They're in the waiting room. There's music. There was no dialogue. There's music, close-ups of the kids' faces. Over the desk, and I don't know if this was real or not. I don't know if Planned Parenthood has it, but over the desk of this waiting room, it says something to the effect of, I can't remember what it was, but something like, we're here for you no matter what, something like that. Mm-hmm. And, but I don't even see that. All I see is I'm like, they're making this place look out to be like it's this beautiful environment. Like so I pause the show. I pause it while they're showing that picture above the screen. And I'm just like, kids, this organization is evil. Like this is fiction. You can't trust this. Well, that opened up all sorts of conversations with my kids, where my kids were talking to me about conversations they're having at school, including where they're feeling blindsided. Mom, Dad, you didn't tell us the good things that Planned Parenthood does. And I'm like, good things? What good things? But they're sharing what they're hearing at school from their friends about some things. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking that deep breath. And I'm feeling like I'm losing. I'm like, Lord, like they've already gotten to my kids. What do we do here? And then it's like the Holy Spirit just showed me the screen. And I look up at the screen and it says, whatever it was, that line, like, we accept you no matter what. And I realized, right or wrong, true to life or not, twisted or not, my kids are hearing messages in this scene that are speaking to their heart about what they long for, a place that they're accepted even when they make mistakes, a place where they can go when they're in big trouble. Mm-hmm. And I don't want them to go to Planned Parenthood. I want them to come to me. Yeah. And so those are some of the difficult conversations we need to be in with our kids, where we're giving and taking. Like, I recognize there's beauty being told here. Let's parse out, let's pull some weeds out of this, because I think that this isn't the whole truth. Man, I'm in the weeds with my kids. My co-author's in the weeds with his kids. These are hard conversations, hard topography, but there's no place I'd rather be. And those conversations, whether they happen in our home or happen in their college dorm room when they leave home, like, I'd rather them have those conversations with us in our home, because at least then we can be in it with them. So that's some of what I'd say to that. There's a lot more, of course, but
No, it's great stuff. Just the presence of being with your kids to watch a movie, so these conversations can come up with in the first place. To
Yeah.
be so present with you, they can feel the scruff of your face. It's funny when you mentioned that. Same thing's going on in our house. My 8-year-old daughter loves, when I'm cleanly shaven, whereas my 6-year-old son Joseph, he said, "I love it when your face is spiky." And so
Yeah.
they're always going back and forth. Wait, oh, he's spiky. So I figure, enough is enough. So what I've started doing is I now shave half of my face. So right now I'm actually cleanly shaven on this half, and this half's got about 2 days of scruff going on. And then the kids love it. My daughter comes up, she's like, "Oh, it's perfect." And then Joseph comes up, starts kissing me, loves the spikes. And so
That is funny.
just,
I thought I was going to say that as a joke. I was going to say you shave half your face. But I was kidding. But you were serious. That's
no, I've literally
fantastic.
been doing it the last month, and the kids absolutely love it. So it's like
That's
every other
fantastic.
shave, I just take half off, and they just love it to pieces. But it's true what you're saying. In terms of Planned Parenthood, there's so much in the optics there of we're here for you. We just want to support you. I mean, last week I had the blessing of going to a crisis pregnancy center here in Phoenix to see just the amazing work that they're doing with these young mothers and helping them. And they were telling me how one mom came recently. She went to Planned Parenthood, and she was like, I know I'm pregnant. I've missed a couple of, cycles. Can we just do an ultrasound? And they're like, no, we really don't need to do that. Here's how it's going to work. It's just going to be 3 days. We're going to give you these pills, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as they just refused her an ultrasound, she just knew something was way off. So she went down the street to this crisis pregnancy center, like, "Yep, we'll give you an ultrasound." And she was 18 weeks along.
Wow.
And once she saw the image of her baby, I mean, she just broke down to know that she was like in the mouth of the wolf, so to speak, and she was able to get out before it snapped down. And just the sheer horror that she was so close to taking that life. And when I was there, they had a beautiful chapel, and in it, they had this beautiful picture of Mary pregnant with Jesus. And it was kind of tattered and didn't look real great. And they said, the story behind this? They said down the street used to be a Planned Parenthood that closed down. And when they closed down and they were taking the place apart, they said they actually found, when they were demolishing or whatever, underneath the floorboards of the abortion surgical room was this image upside down of, in the Catholic faith, it's called Our Lady of Guadalupe, underneath the floorboards of where the abortion procedure is performed. And we don't know any story behind it. We don't know if that was like some construction worker that wanted to plant a grenade underneath the abortion clinic so the thing kind of spiritually goes off and implodes, which it did and closed down, or if that's someone in the abortion industry kind of making a mockery of the gift of life and the incarnation. But just, it just sends chills, the diabolical nature of this and how they want the optics to be like, we're here for you to support you and give you choices and options and plan your parenthood. Parenthood is the last thing on earth they help you to plan. But again, back to the core, just the presence of being on the couch with your kids, watching what they're watching. Irreplaceable. We can set up every single filter and device, but if you're not there, not just quality time, once in a while, dude, quantity time, just be present. To me, I would say, and you'd probably agree, that's the number one thing the kids need.
It is. Like I said before, that technology is part of the problem, and not that technology is all bad. I don't mean that. We couldn't be doing this without technology today, but the solution is really relational, because the longing is relational. The sex at its core is relational, and there's something that's hardwired in our kids, it's hardwired into us. And so the best thing we can do with our kids is be relational. Now, there's lots of terrain there, and that's one of the reasons we wrote the book. We want parents to feel more comfortable having those conversations. We want parents to feel they're in the game. I think there have been some different resources over the years where it's kind of like, just, read this to your kid, show this to your kid. I work with adults all the time, and every single one of them dealing with sexual brokenness, when we start talking about their story, they express, they know, they long for connection with their parents. They wish that things had been different with their dad or with their mom. They wish their mom had said, or their dad had said, or their dad hadn't said. And so part of the reason we wrote this book is because we're convinced your kids don't need us, your kids need you. And we just want to help you be there for your kids in a greater way than maybe you feel like you're able to be right now. So
yeah. So as we wrap up, how can people get a hold of you, of the book, Treading Boldly Through a Pornographic World, how they can connect with your ministry, all the different work that you're doing, Josh?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. treadingboldly.com. You can find more about the book there. You can also just buy it on Amazon or Christian Books or Indie Books, wherever you buy your books. And you can learn more about our ministry at regenerationministries.org. Happy to have people check us out.
Awesome. Well, Josh, can't thank you enough for coming on, being on the show with us. I just ask our listeners to please pray for the fruitfulness of your ministry, because you know as well as I do, like when you're talking to somebody, there's one conversation that's happening between you and them, and then there's another conversation God is having with their heart. And to me, grace of prayer just loosens up that conversation, so that if we can target some prayers sending over to Josh and his ministry, then the married couples, the families that absorb his content, those people that read his books, those things will be fruitful. And if you listeners can do that, that'd be a huge help. Also, if you want to, again, as I said at the top of the show, support our family and the ministry that we're trying to do, you can please do that at patreon.com/Jason Everett. One of the perks is you get to ask our guests questions through Patreon. And as a heads up, super excited about next week on the show. We have, if you've watched the Chosen television series, on season 1, there was an episode of the Samaritan woman at the well. And the woman who plays the actress there, her name is Vanessa De Silvio, is going to be coming on the show next week to describe what it was like being a part of the Chosen, how she was able to prepare for that role and pray through it, and just share her own testimony as well. And so super excited to have Vanessa on the show. If you have not seen the Chosen series, just get on YouTube, type in Chosen Woman at the Well Samaritan. It'll pull up. It's like an 8-minute clip, but man, it is going to reframe the way that you look at that biblical narrative for the rest of your life. And so if you want to ask Vanessa any questions for me to give her during the show, you can support us on Patreon, submit the questions there, and then I'll give them to her on the show. So again, Josh, thank you for being on the program with us, and God bless you and keep up the fantastic work.
Thanks. My pleasure.